Welcome everyone. My name is Akshat and I'll be your moderator this evening. I am excited to welcome Jeff Grogan, Fast Track Technology Advisor, as our speaker tonight for a comparative review on 3D printing resins that are revolutionizing dentistry. Before we get started, I would like to take a moment to go over some housekeeping. If you have a question, please type it into the box labeled "Have a Question," and we will answer them live at the end. CE credit is not available for this webinar, live or on demand. Jeff, welcome. I'll pass it on over to you now.
I appreciate it. Welcome, everyone. Looking forward to speaking with you this evening. For those that joined previous webinars, we've done a couple now. We got to look at scanners, and you were treated to listening to Tyler Walner, one of my good friends and colleagues. Matt Kunzler's done a couple before, and then you had to endure me speaking about not only 3D printers, but CAD/CAM. So I am excited about tonight's topic. We are going to take a little bit closer look at not just 3D printing, but the resins that are kind of on the market. And you're going to find that that's going to blossom a little bit into also talking about how do we design those indications and best ways to kind of go about that. So without further ado, here's looking at this evening. So I'm going to get through some housekeeping stuff. We are going to touch on digital workflow. We are going to touch a little bit on scanners. The bulk of the evening will be spent talking about indications and materials. We'll finish up just touching on 3D printers themselves, and then would love to hear what questions you all have, and we'll kind of wrap up with the live Q&A. So if you caught any of my previous webinars, the picture on the right looks a little different. I was blessed to welcome a little baby girl in early September. So for anybody that caught those other ones, yes, that picture is a little bit different. But a little bit about me professionally. I have been with Henry Schein for about 8 years. I've been in technology the whole time and really had the pleasure of spending time with scanners, mills, 3D printers, and kind of digital workflow for all of my time at Henry Schein. So it's kind of a near and dear thing to me. And that's really where I've got to spend all of my time within dental itself. I would be remiss if I didn't start the evening kind of talking about the elephants in the room, if you will, the asterisks of the evening. So the first of which, I kind of already touched on this, but I'll touch on it again. This is a big topic, and it does have the ability to kind of blossom into a lot of different rabbit holes we can dive down. So really the focus for me this evening is to give you all some ammunition about what you can print, how you go about printing those things, how do you get those things printed, and then what's available to actually create those items, what resins are on the market, and who makes which resin. So that's the bulk of the evening. I'm not going to get too far into scanners. I'm not going to get too deep into design or actually the printers themselves, but if I can leave you with that information, that's kind of what the focus of tonight is. There are no silver bullets. Again, if you've heard me talk before, you've heard me say that. That's where I would really encourage you, as you take a step back and look to see if this is right for you and your practice. There are no silver bullets. I can't say do this and you will be successful. I would encourage you to link up with a Fast Track Technology, or my Fast Track Technology Advisor, myself, or one of my colleagues. And we can kind of walk you through that path and kind of show you what might be good solutions for your practice. I've been doing this a while, but everything you're going to hear is my opinion. It's from my mouth, so it's my opinion. Just take that thing with in stride, right? Take it with a little bit of grain of salt and understand that, yes, I have been able to experience a lot of these things and do a lot of these things, but this is from my mouth. Big asterisk for this evening. I don't get the opportunity to very often work in the clinical world. So a lot of what I do is things that I have either printed myself and got to experience here in my little bubble, or things that I've heard and seen. So I don't get too often, am I able to put these into clinical reality. So kind of keep that in mind as well. This is an ever-changing topic. I feel like new resins hit the market every day, or there's tweaks, new variations. So if something isn't what you want today, wait a day and it'll be around the corner. So without further ado, let's see. I always also like to start off with a little bit of the lighter side. We all know the real reason we want a 3D printer is so we can print silly little things. You will become very, very popular at white elephant parties or amongst the 4 to 8-year-olds. I would warn you that if you go try to print an army of orcs, those orcs are sharper than Legos. So walk at your own risk. Kind of into the professional part of the evening. Digital workflow. I always love to start with this slide. I think it characterizes the digital workflow very well, spells it out very well. It really lets you see start to finish everything that goes into this. As you look a little bit more specifically at 3D printing, I'm going to simplify. Scanning, designing, printing. And I can't really get to the designing or printing part if we don't first start with scanners. So we're going to spend just a minute there. So as you do look at the scanner market, there's still only about 6 options that are most relevant. In no particular order: Cerac Prime Scan, the Itero 3Shape, Trios 345, Planmeca with the Emerald S, Medit with the i700, i700 wireless, or the multiple versions of Dexus, 36, 37, 3800. There are no silver bullets. Kind of a recurring theme of all of this. You do need a scanner before you can get into 3D printing, so you do want to explore which of these tools is going to be best for you. But these are really the ones that you should be looking at and focusing on. And then once you get a scanner, now you're able to kind of get into the rest of the digital workflow, which allows us to now start to talk about design, indications, materials, all of that. In a nutshell, here's what you can 3D print. Now, to go beyond that, quite honestly, you can 3D print anything. It's a matter of identifying what it is you want to print, a software that allows you to do it, and a material that allows you to create it in the manner of which you want. Before we can get too far into this, there is going to be kind of that fork in the road. Fork in the road is going to be who's going to do the design work, who's going to do this stuff for you. And basically, it's going to break down into 2 trains of thought. It is something you're going to outsource and pay somebody else to design, or it's something that you're going to invest and do it yourself. And as you kind of explore those 2 workflows, if you look at an outsourced design, that is going to start with you scan. So you're going to start there, and you're going to send that data to a lab, to a digital design lab. You treat it like a resume writer. You're going to send it to them. You're going to use their expertise, their software, their people to create whatever it is for you, and there's going to be a monetary transaction that happens. Coming back to you, that's going to be an STL file. So they're going to take whatever designed object that was, and you're going to get that and receive it into your inbox, of which then you can put into your 3D printer and actually manufacture. Some advantages and disadvantages. Convenience. You're not having to do the work, especially you as the clinician. Your time is still spent with your patients doing dentistry. You're not over here getting nitty-gritty. You don't have to invest in software. You don't have to invest in training. And ultimately, you don't have the burden of design. If you don't like something, you tell them to fix it. You don't have to get into, well, gosh, I didn't design that correctly, so now I have to go tweak it and do it again. The downside of it is you're no longer in control. So you do lose a little bit of that control. And it does turn into a transactional model. Renting versus owning. You always have those rent payments due. Every time that you want something, you pay for it. So cost of ownership continues to stay pretty even. You never have that payoff point. Conversely, if you look at in-house design, it starts the same way. You start with a digital impression scan, but now that's going to go to your software. So you've gone out and found a software to design whatever it is yourself. You now still, via STL file, are going to transfer that to the 3D printer, of which you will print and deliver to your patient. What becomes most important in this model, of course, now becomes design software. You have to go out and find what design software is going to work best. So is that purchasing a software? If you have to purchase it, you have to train it, you have to have somebody to use it, whether that's yourself or a team member. So there are some things that become kind of cons, things you have to think about. The burden of design is now on you. If that occlusal guard didn't fit, you have nobody but to look at yourself, nobody to blame but yourself. The advantage of it is you have maximum control. You do whatever you like. You control every aspect of that workflow, from the form, fit, and function of whatever it is, all the way through workflow. So if that was something you're going to try to turn a little bit quicker, or you just want the extra control to design whatever it is you want, you have it. You also will eventually have a lower cost of production because it's the ownership model, not the renting model. So that's the first question that we got to kind of dive through before we get to the what's. And now that we're to the what's, we can kind of walk through line by line to see what these look like in materials, because that's kind of one of the emphasis of the night, that are actually available. So the first of those, probably the easiest dental specific thing to make, is model work. So if I want to take a digital impression and if I want to make a basic model, I know that's going to show up really small on your screen. A basic model is just a scan with a flat base. I was able to put it directly into the nesting software and I was able to print something. That could be a software from a design standpoint. That could be something that actually was a part of your digital impression scanner. To name a few, 3Shape and Medit both have model building softwares built inside theirs. Or that could be a function of the 3D printer. Formlabs and SprintRay are great examples of that, where all I need is that raw file and I can produce a very simple model. You do start to get the question of, is it something that you wanted a dental base? So if it's going to be a study model or something a little bit more advanced, you want articulating brackets or pins. You want removable dies. If you do venture into a little bit more intermediate to advanced level of model, that's when you're going to start to have to look at software. So it's either something you're going to have to buy a software to do it, or that's something where you can now start to look to outsource to somebody else. And when you look at materials on the market, everybody's got them for models. Everyone has multiple versions for models. And there's really two major functions. You have a model resin that is created for accuracy, and you have a model resin that is created for speed. So as you look at each of the 3D printer companies, if you look at Formlabs, for example, dental model resin is their accuracy resin. Graft is meant for speed. Same thing with Desktop Health, Model X, Model Z. You'll have a model or a Model T out of Sirona, and then of course SprintRay has a plethora of multiple resins, study model being the fastest to print out of there. So you think of what you're trying to do, and then you match it with the appropriate resin from there. Okay, next topic, occlusal guards. So when it comes to occlusal guards, this is really that first fork in the road when you start to say, who is going to design what? Multiple softwares out there to do it. SprintRay has automated services that you can upload to them and they'll send back down design. So that's more of the outsourced model. There are other companies out there. Henry Schein's coming out with some of their own design services. Full Contour is a lab that does a lot of digital design where you could take and send out all of those scans, of which they come back to you. Or you could look at Medit. Medit came out with Medit Splint. It's a free program. It's a nice program. It's free. It's got a great price tag. 3Shape with Splint Studio, a very well-known, well-liked software. If you were to go the CEREC Avenue and get the Prime Print, that'll come with CEREC InLab, which includes Splint design with it. So you have multiple avenues to get whatever it is you want. And then when you actually look at the resins, I don't want to say not all are created equal, but there are subtle differences between them. And so as you start to break down the different companies and the occlusal guard resins that they have, you will start to notice a couple little subtle differences between them. Dental LT Clear is Formlabs occlusal guard resin. The LT stands for long-term. So it's a long-term bio-compatible resin. It does print fairly clear. It's a fairly rigid material. So when you're thinking about what are you going to prescribe, if you are a fan of a hard night guard, Dental LT is going to fit that very nicely. If you like more of the hard soft variety or something that's a little bit more of a comfort fit, you will find this to be a fairly rigid resin. So just kind of know what you're trying to prescribe it, and maybe that'll help guide you as you identify maybe which printer is right for you. or I should say at least which material is right for you. Sprint Ray has a variety. So Sprint Ray has a large library of resins, 2 branded by Sprint Ray, 1 branded by KeySplint. So thank you for my friends at Sprint Ray, sent this over for me. It's a little bit bigger for you all to see, but this is their Flex resin. That's been a little bit more popular with those looking to create more of that comfort fit. So as you put it in the mouth, it warms up a little bit, it becomes a little bit more malleable, becomes a little bit more comfortable. So the Flex has been very popular amongst those trying to replicate kind of that hard, soft approach. Now, don't be deceived. Flex does not mean a absolutely flexible material that's spongy. It is still a fairly rigid material. It is still a fairly firm material. It just has those properties to it that allow it to be a little bit more comfortable. On the other side of that coin, Sprint Ray also does have a firm resin. So if you prescribe to I want a hard acrylic night guard, they have that as well. KeySplint has been a very popular material, that KeySplint soft material. Again, name a little bit deceiving. It's not a soft material. It's just a little bit more comfortable to wear in the mouth. It provides that hard, soft approach. That's also been a pretty popular material out there. Sprint Ray really has all 3 of them. Desktop Health. So they had 2, I think they rebranded under Smile Guard is the new brand. They used to have eGuard prior to that. One of the things you will notice with Smile Guard is it does come out a little bit more clear. I'll reference you back to the webinar that I gave on 3D printers themselves, but Desktop Health shoots in a different wavelength. It shoots in a 385 nanometer wavelength, which allows it to clear just a little bit more clearly. So you will have a little bit more clear of an object coming out of the Desktop Health printer, especially if that's something that is important to you and your patients. That's something to keep in mind. Though I've seen it, I haven't touched it very much. Dentsply Sirona has a newer product on the market with the prime print, so it's just not out there. I don't have the samples quite yet, but I did get to see, feel, and touch their split material at Dentsply Sirona World back in September. Same concept as the Desktop Health Einstein. It does shoot in a 385 wavelength. You will find that to be a little bit more clear of a material. So that kind of wraps up the occlusal guard. You'll find that once we get to clear liners and surgical guides, the conversation becomes just a touch more simple. There's not quite as many subtle variances amongst materials. Clear liners are still going to be made by printing a model and doing a suck-down. Nobody on market, including all of the major brands, have a directly printed clear liner material or an Essex material. So the way that you are going to print those is pick your resin of choice, and then you're going to print it and you're going to do a suck-down. Historically, these are the resins that you'll do that with. So you'll look at Formlabs, you'll do it with their draft resin, Sprint Ray, either the gray or the study model, the Desktop Health, their Model Z, or the Model T with Dentsply Sirona Prime Print. Those tend to be the faster printing materials and where production becomes the predominant focus. I need more created quicker rather than not necessarily the accuracy needed if you were doing something model work on crown work on a model. So these are the resins you'll typically be looking towards if you're going to get into clear liner production or any sort of thermoformed appliance where production becomes a little bit more important than accuracy. Surgical guides, pretty simple conversation. Everybody's got it, and it does exactly what it says. So as you go produce that surgical guide, you will be walking through the steps of the surgical guide production, and then you'll print it out of the applicable resin from whichever printer you chose. Just to touch briefly on surgical guide design, I did want to leave you with a little bit of idea how to get these things. So it's not just producing a surgical guide. There is a little bit of design work that goes into it. These are some of the brands, not all. It's not an exclusive list, but 3Shape and Planmeca both have very nice surgical guide design software. Blue Sky Bio is that kind of transactional model So you rent that one as opposed to own that one. But with any of them, the steps are going to be the same. You need a cone beam. You need a digital impression scan. Those two get married together. You'll go through, you will plan the implant. Many of you are probably already doing that if you have a cone beam. The last step of that is to take that plan, but now design the surgical guide, which is actually the easy part. At that point, you just trace out exactly where you want that guide, and then it will create that for you. When you look at that surgical guide, it is the resin itself prints out. So let me actually jump back one slide here. So the surgical guide itself will print out. One extra step you need to consider is for your guided kit, there will also be a sleeve for most that pressure fit down into this space that had been created. During the design phase, you will have said, I am using X guided kit with X guided sleeve, and the software will actually account for the spacing of that stainless steel sleeve. So that way, when it's printed, it fits in there, and your guided kit is now compatible. Okay. The question that I get more often than almost anything else is, can you print dentures? The answer is yes, but. So yes, I can, but. And really, when you start talking about dentures, yes, but here are some of the considerations that you want to think about. So taking an edentulous scan is case specific. If you look at the maxilla of this patient, you can see a lot of bony structure. Scanning the maxilla is not that challenging. You can do it, absolutely. I've done it both for immediate and final dentures successfully. When it comes to the mandible, the bony ridge in the front, pretty easy. But as you work your way back towards the retromolar pad, depending how long they've been edentulous, depending on resorption, depending on how much of that mandibular ridge is present, it can be challenging. And that's not necessarily based on a specific scanner technology. It's more of the mechanical nature of scanning. So when you take a traditional impression that goes in the mouth is at rest. So you're able to capture all the contours of tissue. There's compressive forces that force and displace that tissue to where you're able to get a good impression of what was there. When you're scanning actively and the mouth is open, you're stretching things, you're moving things. So especially right down here, that can become very challenging to scan. So yes, but it might be case specific. If I'm able to capture edentulous arches, the next challenge or consideration becomes, can you establish the vertical? How are these two related to each other? And how can you do that? What it really needs to be, it needs to be static. So for you to capture a bite, it must be static, it must be fixed and repeatable. I have to be able to do it on each side so that my occlusal plane is accurate. So if I can establish two good scans, upper and lower, and I can establish the relationship of those, fantastic. I can now move to the design software, which becomes another consideration for you. You could outsource it. Many companies will do digital denture design. You could do it yourself. It's not overly challenging, but it does take a little bit more of an intermediate skill set. And it also does require a software capable of designing dentures. Typically, that's not an optimized software. That's a little bit bigger in terms of like a lab software. Can you do it? Yes, but it becomes just a little bit more of an intermediate to advanced process. And then last consideration is, this is what a denture looks like when I print it. To take it from this and turn it into that takes skill. It's not something you learn overnight. It's not something that you just automatically, a little bit of, hit it with a rag wheel or something to polish it up and, there's a beautiful denture. It takes a little bit of ability and time to do those things. So do you have the ability and time, or do you have the person that has the ability and time to be able to take a raw print and then make that into a final denture? So those are just some of the considerations. So can you do a denture? Yes, but those are things to consider. Looking a little bit more at the resins that are available. Again, not all of them are created equal. And again, that's probably not a fair way to say it. There are subtle differences. Formlabs has a lot of different bases, a lot of different shades. I tend to find their denture material, and hopefully this shows up on screen, just a little bit translucent. So a very nice material, lots of choices to do it, a little bit more translucent when it is actually created. They also have, kind of related, but they do have a custom tray material. So if you weren't able to capture that digital impression, you still could take what you did have and at least create a custom tray now to move through the digital denture process. Sprint Ray's got a couple different options here, and there's a couple different ways to skin this cat. First of all, they have a try-in material. So that would allow you to at least get that try-in, at least see where you are. And then when it comes to the final creation, a couple different ways to do it. So they do have a very nice product in Onyx. That is their denture tooth resin, or you could use that for hybrids as well. So a very nice material. But you would pair that with a denture base from Dentka or from NextDent. So both of those, you would print the base, and then you would use the Onyx as the denture tooth resin. I already kind of mentioned it, but yes, you could do hybrids with that. You could print the Onyx, and then you could go through and actually stain the gingiva pink if that's what you were trying to achieve with any given workflow. So a couple different ways to do the denture workflow. Yes, they do also have through Keystone, their key tray material to be able to do custom tray. So they have that and check the box as well. I think my favorite material, and this has been for my limited exposure, that's where I do have to go back to my asterisks and say, no, I don't get to often live in this world. But from everything I've experienced with it, from all of the printers that I've put out there and the people that are doing this material comes with rave reviews. And that's Flexera from Desktop Health. Its kind of claim to fame is it's less fracture. So it's more fracture resistant, not less fracture resistant. So a little bit more fracture resistant. It's a little bit hardier. And it's not as bacteria and moisture don't leach into the denture itself. It took me a while to understand what that meant and why it mattered. I did have a very good friend over at Desktop Health that explained this to me. And basically it has to do with breaking down of the denture and stinking. If the bacteria can't leach into the denture, it doesn't stink as bad. So it lasts a little bit longer and it doesn't stink. So thank you for Desktop Health in that relationship. That kind of explained a little bit of that to me. You will see the denture bases and the denture shades, tooth shades, the Flexera Smile tooth shades. So a variety there as well. So that's going to give you a lot of flexibility when it comes to what you're actually trying to do. When you polish up the Flexera denture, it looks great. It really, really does look great. Here is what it looks raw. Again, I know this is not the easiest thing to see on this screen, but I'm trying. A virtual show and tell is not always easy. But here's the raw denture, and to be able to take this, put in a little bit of effort, and have that, it is a very beautiful material. And Desktop Health as well has their custom tray material. So I can go ahead and get through every edentulous workflow that I would need. Lastly, we have the prime print. They do have a tray material. So that's available now, but being a little bit newer product, the Lucitone material is not yet formulated and approved for the prime print. So the Lucitone material exists, just not formulated for the prime print. So look for that to come here pretty quick, but that will be one of those that I told you every day, these things change. Any day, I expect that to be available. So Lucitone will be the lead denture product within the prime print itself. Okay, I think this is our last stop. Another question that I get a lot, crown and bridge. Can you 3D print a crown? Again, answer is yes, absolutely. They look beautiful. The fit, again, thank you for some friends at at Desktop Health and Sprint Ray. They look great. Fit is amazing. So internal surfaces, since you're not dealing with a limited, you're not dealing with the limiting factor of a burr. I don't have overmilling. I don't have undermilling. I don't have any burr marks. They fit incredibly well. They look great. The problem that I have today is that they're not very strong. So these crown resins today sit at about 115-ish, give or take. You know, some are a little bit more, some a little bit less, but 115 megapascals. That's about a fifth of the strength of Enix. It's about a tenth of the strength of zirconia. Fit great, look great, find the application. Inlays, onlays, wonderful. Temps, love it. Permanent crowns, not yet. It's coming, not yet. Give it a couple years maybe, even maybe a year to 2 to 3, and we'll be there. There's already zirconia crowns that are being printed. It's a very lab-heavy process. We're not there yet on the clinical side, but it's coming. What I do like out of 3D printed crowns, temporaries, pre-planned temporaries. So if you're able to take a scan at consultation, send that off or do it yourself, but design something and have that designed as a shell temporary. So it comes back as a fill and stick. All you have to do is prep the tooth, fill it, stick it, cure it, done. Love it. Especially if you get into bridge work, especially if you get into multiple units, you will find that that will be a very efficient process. And given that I can 3D print a crown for about $1, a very economical process. So maybe not for permanent crowns today, but certainly look for that to be kind of become the way of the future. And as we look at who has what today, Formlabs, Sprint Ray, yep, they have them, different shades available. Desktop Health, yep, through Flexera Smile. Prime Print still is with temporaries only, so it's not indicated for full contour crowns, permanent full contour crowns. But like I said, we're getting there. Not quite there yet, we're getting there. You will start to see shades expand, strength go up. You'll start to see probably different materials rather than just a resin-based crown. You'll probably start to see other stuff come to market as well. So keep an eye on this one for starting to really heat up and kind of develop over the next couple of years. And I think that about takes us through all of the stuff that I wanted to get through in terms of indications and materials and kind of the how-tos, at least the simple how-tos for the evening. Anything not mentioned? Yes, you can. You need a software, you need somebody to design it, and you need a material to make it in. So the answer is yes. You just have to look at those different criteria to actually get it made. With printers, I'm going to pause here just for a second. If anybody wants to get out their phone and scan that little QR code, that'll link you right to the comparative review that I gave on 3D printers. I'd encourage you to go visit that. Very much the same style. I kind of look at the different printers on market, talk about the different systems themselves, strengths, feature benefits, and maybe that will help guide you a little bit onto which 3D printing system might be best for you. Outside that, we are rapidly approaching the finale. So I think we're kind of there. If anybody has any questions, if anybody has any things they want to speak about, now is the time. And before we open it up, I really would encourage you, if these are topics, scanners, 3D printers, cone beam, even through CAD/CAM or anything else, reach out to one of the Henry Schein FTAs, either through your Henry Schein rep, or I think through this webinar, you're able to link to me. Get in touch with us. We would love to hear kind of your vision, your story, hear your questions, and be able to kind of start to fit what might be the best solutions for you. So I do appreciate it very much. Let's see if we have any questions, and if we don't, I wish you all a very fond farewell and a nice evening.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's give everyone about 30 seconds to see if there's any last questions coming in.
Sure.
And then, Jeff, if they wanted to reach out to you specifically, what would be a good means of communication?
If anybody's got a pen handy, I'll do a couple things. I thought there was a link somewhere in here to be able to pull up bio and information. You're welcome to give me a buzz. My number, 314-238-6154. For anybody that was slow on that, 314-238-6154. My email is jeff.grogan@henryschein.com. And if you don't know who your person is supposed to be, reach out to me. I'll get you to the right place.
Thank you, Jeff. I think that wraps up our presentation. Thank you, everyone. Sorry, Jeff?
Did we have any questions or no?
No questions.
Okay.
Thank you all for joining us tonight. Thank you, Jeff, for the excellent presentation. We did record. Oh, Jeff, we did have one question coming in. This one's from Ralph. He wanted to know, what is the most cost-effective design software on the market now, in your opinion?
Oh, man, that's a can of worms right there. A lot of it depends on what are you trying to design. So you have optimized workflows. So if you look at, I wanted to design occlusal guards only. Well, there's a variety of programs, and a lot of it just has to do with volume. If you're going to do 10 over the next 5 years, well, there might be a software specifically that would fit that need. Maybe that's a transactional model where you don't actually have to invest in the software, but you use somebody else's software and pay as you go. That would be like a blue sky model. If you're doing 10 a day, that would probably, temporaries. So temporaries, a couple different workflows to look at. Medit does have one built into their software. It's okay. It's in early generation, so it's still being worked out. If you look at other crown and bridge design softwares, 3Shape has one, Plimeca has one. Sirona, you're going to be able to use it through InLab, but not through the Ceric software. And then as you look at, I saw your follow-up there with wax ups. As you look at wax ups, there's a couple different ways to do that. You might be able to do it through, again, Medit has a lot of software. 3Shape has a wonderful smile design software. That's kind of a virtual wax up. And for the presentation to the patient, that checks a lot of boxes. Here was you before, here was you after. Isn't this something you want to do? If you're looking to go to the next level of that and say, okay, great, we did a smile design, virtual smile design, but now I actually want to create. You're starting to get into lab software. You're starting to get into bigger software. So your 3 main softwares on the market, 3Shape Dental Systems, ExoCAD, or Dentsply Sirona Ceric InLab. Those would be your 3. Depending on what you have, there may be a best answer. If you're a 3Shape owner, Dental Systems becomes pretty attractive. If you're a third-party owner, maybe that's ExoCAD. If you're a Sirona owner, maybe that's InLab. So I can't give you just a silver bullet, here's you. Give me a shout and reach out, and we can explore your situation a little bit better. But those are the 3 prominent lab softwares on the market. Anybody else?
I think that covers it, Jeff. Thank you.
Yeah, hey, very much appreciate everyone's time. I appreciate you guys hopping on this evening.
Thank you. And we did record tonight's webinar, everyone, and we will be emailing the recording to you sometime next week. We're going to appreciate your feedback via our survey that'll pop up on your screen shortly. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you again, Jeff, and we look forward to seeing you on our future webinars.
Okay, y'all take care.